Happy feelings in the air. Happy feelings everywhere. Thank you for tuning in to In Your Feelings 360 with Dr. Twina Bell. I am so excited to be having a conversation with the community today in reference to our emotions and emotional shifting. We are here at In Your Feelings 360 to have a dialogue and a session with you about topics that impacts our mental health, our physical and emotional health, and to give you strategies and tips to deal with day-to-day challenges, disparities, and just things that we come across in life that impacts our emotions. So I hope that everyone has gotten the opportunity to kind of transition and get settled down in reference to the new year. And I'm just excited to be able to launch and to share with you guys knowledge, wisdom, and truth about the severity of being in touch with our emotions and to ensure that we have the emotional library and the emotional tools that we need in order to thrive. So one of the things that we will be speaking of on today is just being able to value the science of relationships. The science of relationships. How many times have you been in a relationship, rather that was playing the role of being a wife, a mother, auntie, a father, a son, uncle, grandparent, or even your role, in being a teacher or just whatever your role is. We all have roles. We all have representatives, and it takes power, it takes skills, and it takes mastery of being able to manage relationships in order to thrive and function in the various roles that we have. And as a result of all of the demands that we have, we get emotional. Emotions, that is, feelings of happiness and sad and up and down and just, depression and anxiety and fear and shame and joy and peace. And all of those things are connected to our emotional well-being. All of those things are emotions that impact our mind, how we think. It impacts our hearts, what we feel. We feel it in our heart, we feel it in our soul. And also how our gut is impacted, our gut health. So when we think about, the brain and our executive functioning, I always try to remind my listeners or individuals that I'm working with, in my practice, in counseling sessions. I always try to remind people that, we're a tri-man, and that's our mind, body, and spirit. But also, as we think of our brain that has such a huge responsibility that impacts our functioning, to also be reminded that it's about, what we think. As a man thinketh, so is he. And then how we feel, our heart, how that things and situations impact our heart. And then our gut health, how all our systems work together, and even internally, we can have a physical response to situations that requires us to experience various emotions. So that was just kind of a quick update / overview about, just really understanding our emotions. It's a national agenda, a national push right now to really get people to understand emotional wellness, and just to make it a priority for yourself and for the people that are around you to be able to continue to have conversations about emotional wellness, because it's very, very important. So I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what our topic for today is. I think with all the holidays, at our last session, we talked about grief, and I myself had to experience grief over the last couple of months, but also a lot of the people that I've come in contact with. And I thought about what we can conversate about today is let's talk about trauma. Let's talk about trauma. Lots of times when we think about post-traumatic stress disorder, again, that's post-traumatic stress disorder. When we think about post-traumatic stress disorder, lots of times we think about the military. And on another note, I just want to take this opportunity to send the highest of the highest of the highest praise out for our troops. So we're praying for our troops right now. And I just wanted to, take the opportunity to definitely address that. And in addition to post-traumatic stress and how the impact of the trauma that individuals typically feel in the military realm, I wanted to bring it also, I wanted to talk about post-traumatic stress and how it's impacted from the standpoint of stress in families and in our communities. And one of the things that we have children that are returning back into the schools, and they're going to be in the classrooms, and there are going to be a lot of transitions going on with our children. But they have been out of school for a couple of weeks, and just reading the news and looking at the television and following up on various platforms throughout our country, we've experienced a lot of loss and trauma as it relates to, different modalities or different levels of violence. So a lot of trauma associated with a lot of gunshot wounds, victims of gunshot wounds. People can experience stress and anxiety and fear as it relates to post-traumatic stress, and the goal is to get our community to understand that PTSD is real, and it's really outside of, it goes beyond people that experience stress, post-traumatic stress, and as it relates to the military. So I just wanted to speak on post-traumatic stress and give you some pointers today that will help you keep your eyes open so that you can be a wellness advocate, an emotional wellness advocate within your own home, within your community, in whatever setting you dwell in. And the greatest thing about being able to recognize what that looks like in our children is because together with knowledge, wisdom, and truth, we can not only help ourselves with this information, because we all have functioned as a child. And if you just take this moment to just think about, your past memories of yourself as a child, I think one of the things that you will be able to understand is that as a child, you had emotions, and you were also exposed to, whether it was a positive or a negative situation, but based on the trajectory of, whatever you've experienced through your childhood, all of that contributes to the person that you have grown to be today. So just to kind of give you some statistics about post-traumatic stress and childhood trauma, the first thing I wanted to let you know is that I talked about brain and the purpose of, brain development, and understanding that our brain controls our actions, our feelings, and our behavior. So it's like everything kind of coupled up in there together. But a child's positive or negative experience, it can shape but it can also reshape your brain. So that means that regardless of what experiences our kiddos have to face, we don't give up on them, because even though a kid may experience or witness trauma through domestic violence, losing a loved one, seeing someone pass away, shootings, even childhood molestation, sexual trauma, there's a whole wide range of issues that can contribute to a child experiencing post-traumatic stress. But the great thing about it is the way that the brain is made, that we can actually work together as emotional wellness advocates and help to reshape the damage that's been done to a brain of a child based on relationship enhancement techniques, which we'll talk about that a little later. So just to share some statistics with you right now, just to kind of give us a real understanding of the intensity of the need for the call for action, that each year nearly 60% of youth are exposed to violence in their communities, in their homes, and as we all know, this is even taking place in our schools. And the thing about the community violence and the violence that's in our home, like most of the time, when we look at the news and we hear about a shooting, or we hear about, the loss of a loved one, we may even see that on social media, or when we think about death, it is about that incident that's taken place. But it's very, very common for the individuals that are involved, such as children and the people that are impacted by the person that had to experience those things. We need to be there to have the conversation for them, because again, all of these things impact their overall functioning during the event and even after the event. So basically, everything needs to be research based, and the great thing about this show, In Your Feelings 360, we all know that when we talk about research and outcomes, lots of times in the minority community, we are sometimes not included in a lot of the studies. So studies are done, but a lot of times they may not be culturally competent, meaning that the outcomes of the research could really be based on the Western culture versus being specific to ethnic minority communities. So basically, research confirms that being exposed to childhood trauma, it definitely has a long-term impact on the child's brain. And overall, over time, childhood trauma correlates with negative outcomes, adverse behaviors. It has an impact on a child's ability to function in a healthy relationship. And sometimes it can even cause health-related issues. And so it's really important for us to really check on our kiddos and to really equip ourselves so that we can be wellness advocates to help them thrive. Over time, childhood trauma correlates to negative outcomes and factors a child's ability to be resilient in life. So kids are resilient. We're resilient as a culture, as a people. We're very resilient. Being resilient means being able to, in spite of any situation, being able to kind of bounce back and step up and keep going. But being resilient in the face of trauma, one of the things to help our kiddos to become resilient is to help them get involved with caring adults. And through positive interactions, positive daily interactions with our kiddos, it gives us an opportunity to help them to be able to thrive. So in order to do that, though, there's a formula, there's a strategy. We have to really be intentional about situations and about ways that we can help children and even adults to deal with some of the trauma that happens within the community.